no running water, filth littering the road. Vermin infestations are rampant, and children are unable to go to school because they are too busy roaming the streets, panhandling. Does any of this sound familiar to you? What I mean is, can you relate to this kind of experience? If you answered yes, then you have experienced abject and really third world poverty. Friends, I'm eternally grateful that I've never experienced that level of poverty, and I don't take anything in my life for granted. I think that most of us in the U.S. are blessed beyond measure because our ancestors did experience what I just called third world poverty in what is now the first world. We're young and we come from more affluent societies. We have no real knowledge of what it means to be utterly poor. Unfortunately, there are many countries around the globe where people are living in deplorable conditions. What we're going to explore is the reason for this, and we're going to explore it from a spiritual and also a philosophical standpoint. Friends, poverty is not a static position in life. People can, no matter where they are born in the world, rise above poverty if they first understand what it is and have the desire to do the inner work. The issue that suppresses the hope of the impoverished is their external living conditions. In their mind, they keep thinking, I have nothing. In order to escape my hellish conditions, I must have money. But as I'm saying this, you can see the contradiction. If you're poor, then you simply don't have the money to get out of your circumstance. Is that not the point? The point is that you are impoverished. So what we're actually doing is acknowledging that state, and we're dealing with reality. We're dealing with the reality that poverty is not something static, but it is real in the sense that it must be dealt with directly. The idea that poverty is a lack of money and resources is what I would call external, or the political definition of the word poverty. Now, you may be saying to yourself, well, what other way can we define poverty? Friends, there's always another way of looking at life. To attempt to interpret life through a narrow lens keeps one in ignorance, unable to see. You're not able to see alternative perspectives and nuances that may offer a way out or offer solution. So there is poverty as a socioeconomic condition, and then there is poverty as a spiritual condition. The latter precipitates the former. Poverty is a state of mind that does not envision the worth or value of the human being. For you see, in order for a person to become affluent, he must first give himself value. The way he does this is by finding a way to contribute to the well-being of those in need. Essentially, what this is service. We're talking about service, which is really contribution. Those who have great wealth give. Some of the most, probably all, of the most successful businesses in the Western world serve a purpose, and they serve a great purpose. They provide something that the masses need. Now, of course, I'm not saying you have to go that big or start off big. Nobody does. Businesses grow as people grow, and we're going to see that. You see, those who have great wealth give, and universal law is centered on reciprocity. And if one does not serve his fellow men, he cannot accept to receive anything in return. Now, this is not a far-reaching task. One does not have to leave his country to volunteer to help children in Sudan. I'm telling you, friends, this can be something as simple as assisting an elderly neighbor. But what I really want to stress here is the importance of the lesson, and that is understanding that you, the individual, is needed and valued. So you don't have to do anything big. You don't have to plan to volunteer. Somebody right under your nose needs help. You have something in you that you can offer. You might be really good at math and you can tutor children, or you might be the only one in your neighborhood that owns a car, and a couple or a single mother needs help once a month with food shopping. What all of this reinforces is the value of the human being. And when people know that they are valued and someone needs them, that gives them a sense of self-worth. Impoverished people have no self-worth. That is why they live and accept their living conditions. They believe that respect, honor, and love come only to those who have money. But that's not the way it goes. In order to command respect, one must walk with his head up and he must live an honorable life. The number one reason that crime is higher in impoverished communities rather than affluent ones is not because they lack money. It is because the people lack dignity and respect for themselves. Criminals are degraded people. They don't value their own life, let alone that of their neighbor. They don't have hope, and they commit crimes because they don't believe they have anything of value to lose. Most of them have been violated by people in their own family, and that is what actually contributed to their lack of self-worth. Now, this applies directly to drug addicts, prostitutes, drug dealers, and even teenage mothers. All of the above are degraded states and are indeed the recipe for poverty. Friends, there's an old saying, an idle mind is the devil's playhouse. In many impoverished communities and ghettos, you will find children playing in the streets unsupervised, and often the teenagers roaming about in gangs. This is because there is nothing to occupy their minds. There are no jobs, and many don't want to go to school. So what's left but to cause trouble, to do things that terrorize the people of the community, which plunges the community further into impoverished conditions. So now we can see how the problems that individuals have in their life can easily contribute to the society at large, making poverty not simply an individual problem, but a collective one. It's important to note that poverty is not an unnatural state. All men start out poor. It is a state of primitivism, and man has a moral obligation to uplift himself from the state of poverty. But the only way he can do this is by first learning to love and value himself. This means that he must respect his neighbors and the neighborhood by keeping it tidy. He must maintain order in his home. His children must be civilized and made to take on responsibilities such as chores. Children must be given daily tasks. They cannot be allowed to simply wander about aimlessly. That is a recipe for trouble. You see, poverty is man in a degraded state. His living conditions are degraded, and so are his thoughts. In order to change his living conditions, man must confront his inward condition, and that is moral degradation. But he first must be strong enough to accept that he is degraded. I find that most people are offended by this because they don't want to admit their inferiority. But this is not to cause shame. This is for the purpose of dealing with reality. That's the first step. And what we're actually talking about is self-improvement. If man should want to acquire more money and a better life, God and nature will provide him the means. But he first must do the work on himself. He must refine his character and learn to carry himself dignified and upright. Wealth and affluence is entrusted to those who can handle it, and those who can't, even if they get it, will lose it. And we see this all the time, but we really don't pay attention. You see, there's a fallacy that's making its rounds regarding the wealthy, and it is that they are stealing from the poor and the middle class. But that's a lie, because wealth cannot be stolen from those who never had it to begin with. However, this can be true the other way around. And that is essentially the definition of socialism and communism, but that's another video. Any man who wants wealth for betterment and the advancement of humanity has always acquired the greatest wealth because he aligned himself with nature. And nature wants man to thrive, and if man desires to rise above poverty, he must also want to thrive. The degraded people, those who have not yet evolved their minds beyond primitivism, must learn the true value of the human being. The human being in his highest form, the evolved man, has self-control. He is clear-minded and practices virtue in his daily life. Am I saying that he's perfect? No, that's not the definition of a man. Man is an imperfect being who must constantly evolve his inner character, and that is the only way he will rise above poverty. Friends, when you look at third world African countries who have been impoverished for centuries, you should perhaps question that. I say this because there are tons of conspiracy theories as to why third world poverty, crime exists, and most, if not all, the reasons center on systemic racism. But as I have eloquently argued, to blame white people for man's inhumanity to man is in itself evil. In other words, to relegate evil to a specific racial group completely absolves other men from the evil they're doing. Not only this, but it undermines the natural law and the divinity of God. God is the ultimate authority of man, and should men suffer impoverishment and even death, suffice to say we should acknowledge that God had a hand in it. There is no affair on earth that God does not have a hand in. Men can do nothing without God. Any man who has risen above poverty did so because God allowed him to do it. Any man that lives a degraded and undignified life will remain where he is because he did not align himself with the laws of nature. It is the law of nature, universality, that dictates that man must improve on his character. The notion that we ought to provide handouts in the name of charity to the impoverished actually keeps them bound to poverty. They become slaves and total dependents, never able to stand on their feet, unable to feed, clothe, and even provide shelter for their children. This is truly anti-God, and it does nothing to edify the human spirit. But I understand why they do it. They do it to make themselves look like good people. Fortunately, God knows their true intentions because he looks at the heart, and he deals with moralists. Friends, it's important to see that philosophy views the world through a lens of wisdom. And philosophy allows us to understand the hidden truths of life. That is why it is needed in the world. If you like this content and you want more, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. The time is now.